Do you guys know that Kuki Shinobu have a hoodie? It honestly is one of the cutest thing ever.
That hoodie is very trippy.
It is very cute.
I'm a fan.
I'm a huge fan. Kuki Shinobu is the latest addition in Genshin Impact, and not only that she is very cute, but she also has a very cheerful personality, always cleaning up after the troublesome Arataki gang leader Ito. However, today we are not going to be talking about personality or character design, but rather we're going to be talking about character gameplay, or if this character is good in the Genshin Impact meta. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today, but as always, before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel as it really helps out a lot. Let's get started. First thing first, Kuki is mostly played as a electro healer in the Genshin Impact meta. Now that's a really good thing because it is a void or gap that we're missing. Previously in Genshin Impact, we don't really have any electro healer, so she come in and perfectly fill that gap for us. If you care for electro healer, well, here is Kuki Shinobu, our very first. The thing about healer in Genshin Impact is that they are almost never strictly required. When you don't take enough damage to justify bringing a healer, or you just have enough damage to speedrun the entire abyss to the point where you don't really care about a healer, then healer are not needed and you can always drop them. And this is the same case probably for Kuki Shinobu. In the Genshin Impact meta, the top tier healer are top tier and good not because of their healing capability, but rather the other things that they do. For example, if we take a look at Bennett, who is the best character in the game, he is able to provide a massive amount of attack buff, and his healing is just a nice bonus. Sayu and Jean are uneven characters, so they carry the VV artifact set, and VV artifact set are so good as they shred enemy elemental resistance by 40%. If we even take a look at further, something like Kokomi are good exactly not because of her healing capability, but rather because of her off-field hydro application. Her healing, again, is just a nice bonus. If we take a look at the other end of the spectrum, like Chi-Chi or Barbara, you realize that these characters are bad because they offer exactly nothing else but healing. They don't even generate any energy on their elemental skill, so they can't even act as a battery. These two characters' only purpose is to heal, and because they don't bring anything else to the table, they are not so great and therefore are not actively being played in the Genshin Impact meta. With that being said, the first thing we have to investigate for Kuki Shinobu is that other than healing, is she able to bring anything else to the table? Starting off, the amount of damage that Kuki Shinobu can offer is very low. Her elemental skill doesn't even scale of HP% and instead scale of attack. So if you ever build HP% for healing purposes, then you won't be doing a lot of damage in your elemental skill, although your elemental burst could still do a good chunk or small amount of damage. The thing here is that it overall doesn't really do a lot unless you're building full elemental mastery, and while there is potential to do some kind of full elemental mastery overload build to do damage, currently that is still being experimented with, but it's not looking good so far. So it's not too unfair to say that Kuki Shinobu is not really suitable for damage, and she basically doesn't do any damage at all. In terms of energy generation, every single time the Kuki Shinobu elemental skill hit, it has a 45% chance of generating any electro energy. The trick here is that you have to be within the enemy melee range, as it proc in a melee circuitous area. So it might not work if you're playing a ranged character like Yoimiya, but overall speaking, this energy generation is not the greatest, but it's not that terrible either, although it is definitely on the lower end, especially compared to other electro character like Fischl. Finally, her electro application is acceptable. It is not the greatest, but it's not too slow either. It has standard ICD, so it'll proc once every free hit. On the other hand, her elemental burst is able to apply a good amount of electro in a rapid succession though, so that's at least something going for her. Overall speaking, there's nothing too special about any of those. If you're looking for high electro application or just high electro damage, generally speaking, you would first consider a different electro characters. Namely, Fischl just does everything better, like electro application or damage. And after Fischl, you could consider putting Kuki Shinobu in as a secondary option if you still need a second electro characters, but usually there are other electro characters you can run, namely Beidou as well. So Kuki Shinobu is outclassed in terms of the utility. However, we still have to look at her healing. In terms of healing, Kuki Shinobu does what she's advertised to do, which is she healed you. Unfortunately, there are some major downsides. For example, number one that you might be able to immediately observe is it costs you a lot of HP just to cast her elemental skill. However, additionally, Kuki elemental skill only heal one character at a time, namely only the on-field characters, and her kit overall have no no way of healing the entire party at once. That means that if some of your background character took damage, you have to put them on the field in order to heal them, and could cost you a lot of DPS time in the process. Unlike a character like Sayu, Jin, or Kokomi who can heal the entire party at once and could be especially useful when you're fighting the Wolfhound who can damage your entire party at once through the method of corrosion. The most important factor is that as Kuki elemental skill will drain her HP, she'll eventually hit 20% HP as she's a quick swap character, and you are not really ever gonna put Kuki on field to heal her. If you do, it's gonna be a lot of DPS time cost and you're gonna be losing a lot of damage, so generally speaking, it's not worth it. That just means that your Kuki Shinobu is basically gonna be permanently at 20% HP, and not only it stresses the player out as you feel like every time you swap at a Kuki Shinobu, you have to perfectly avoid every hit or you're just gonna get one-shotted, but if you do get hit, then you are actually gonna get one-shotted. It is kind of weird because she is a healer, however, the person who needs the healing the most is Kuki Shinobu herself, except you just don't want to heal her because it's a waste of the time. To make the matter a little worse, Kuki elemental skill doesn't really work that well either. If you use some other character like Kokomi, you realize that as soon as I cast her elemental skill, I will immediately get healed. So if I happen to get hit during casting her elemental skill, at least I'll be healed a little bit and the chances of me surviving is a little higher. On the other hand, for Kuki Shinobu, not only her elemental skill lock you in place for a second so you have higher chance of getting hit, but it also doesn't heal you until the first tick that come in a second later, and I'll demonstrate it real quick. There's a very long animation that locks you in place, and the heal doesn't come in a little bit later. And usually by that time you have swapped off already to different characters, so you didn't really get heal on your Kuki Shinobu anyway. And overall, all of these just kind of contribute to her being even more fragile when she's already fragile. So at the end, to be honest, Kuki Shinobu, even though she's a healer, she might just be the character with the highest chance of dying in your party. Kind of a little counterintuitive. Fortunately, there are still ways around it. You can immediately dash cancel all of your elemental skill, or you can just immediately cast your elemental burst right after your elemental skill, which not only gives you the iframe, but because her elemental burst take a second to cast, it will also give you a tick of healing in the process. It just kind of sucks as Kuki Shinobu is not a damage heavy character, so you're gonna be losing some DPS uptime there. Generally speaking, her elemental burst is not worth casting as it doesn't do any damage, and so you're better off doing anything else available in your party. Fortunately, Kuki Shinobu is not amazing against Rifthound, since by the time you switch to Kuki Shinobu and cast her elemental skill, and before the heal kicked in, you might just die to corrosion, or you happen to get hit by the Wolfhound and you die. This is kind of ironic as fighting against the Rifthound is one of the only few content where people strongly prefer a healer. And again, the healer is still not necessary, but people would strongly prefer to bring a healer against Wolfhound because of their corrosion mechanics. And in this case, even though Kuki Shinobu is a healer, she once again is not that amazing in the only content that kind of prefer to have a healer. And those are pretty much the major problem of Kuki Shinobu. Not only that healer is just not really a desired role in Genshin Impact, but she also doesn't really do that very well. And so to be honest, I would say she's quite bad, which leaves me quite disappointed as again, I do really like her characters. However, I actually don't think she's as bad as most people make it out to be at the current moment. The thing about Kuki Shinobu at the end of the day, as I mentioned before, is that she is still an electro healer, which we didn't have in the game. And anytime you care for an electro healer, to be honest, Kuki Shinobu is okay. And again, she's not that good. And if you have other character that you rather prefer, then you can have those. But if you strongly care for electro healer in your party, then to be honest, Kuki Shinobu will get the job done most of the time. For example, typically speaking, the Taser team is ran with Sucrose, Fischl, Beidou, and Xingqiu. However, this team leaves a lot of people uncomfortable because it doesn't have a primary healer. So bringing Kuki Shinobu here is a perfect example where it just worked really well. And I would rather people start playing Taser team with a healer than just feeling really uncomfortable to play Taser team as they're afraid to bring it without a healer. To be honest, throughout my hours of playtest, I found Kuki Shinobu was able to perform her job really well, which was just being an electro healer. It was a little stressful because seeing your party member at 1% HP all the time, and knowing that if you switch to her and you get hit, she's gonna die, but you have to switch to her to cast the heal and then switch off. That process was very stressful because you have a party member who is so close to dying all the time, and so that was like kind of bad. But overall, she did do her job very well, which is to keep me or my other party member that are on the field battling the very difficult bosses like Mago Genki or PMA very healthy. She was able to heal my other characters, and to be honest, her overall healing is quite nice. It doesn't heal that fast, but it is a good amount of healing over the entire duration of her elemental skill. Anytime you're just looking for a electro healer, then to be honest, Kuki Shinobu, while it's not super amazing, she does kind of get the job done. One of this primary example is actually in Mono Geo. While many people prefer to run Zhongli to draft a super Mono Geo team, Kuki Shinobu here is actually a pretty solid choice, and even better that she is from the Arataki gang and she is on the Ito banner, as she has constant electro application, which means that you can easily crystallize on the enemy using like Goro, and then you can proc the Geo Resonance that way. Compared to other character like Kokomi, where her Hydro application doesn't really function and her jellyfish doesn't follow you, it's just more of a downside since you don't have the freeze element to maintain the jellyfish in the same spot. Or to some other character like the Anemo one like Jean or Sayu, just doesn't really matter since you can't baby Geo anyway. In this case, Kuki is better than those other characters and could be potentially very useful for your Arataki Ito team. But of course, not limited to that is that anytime you're playing like a Taser team, let's say with double Hydro, and you really want an Electro healer to proc Electro application while you're running with double Hydro, then once again, she is quite decent and does get the job done. Unfortunate sad truth is that unless you're specifically looking for an Electro healer, then usually there are better options out there. As an Electro sub DPS, there's always Fischls, but also Electro Applicator. And as a healer, if you're not looking specifically for Electro 1, generally speaking, any other element is better. Once again, those are characters like Bennett, Sayu, Jean, or even like Kokomi and so on. Overall, Kuki Shinobu is kind of like Toma in the sense that she has her niche, and that niche does have some amount of potential, but overall in the Genshin meta speaking, she is quite bad. She has some major problem in her kit, and her meta position does have some major problem and have just too many replacements. But with that being said, Kuki Shinobu is not all too bad. Maybe in the future she might even get really good, maybe with some potential character release that really care for Electro Carrier, or maybe Danjo with Electro Reaction. But with that being said, that's gonna be it for the video. Let me know what you think about Kuki Shinobu in the comment below, whether that be her gameplay or just overall aesthetic or personality, as I think Kuki Shinobu is my #1 favorite characters in the entire game, overall character design wise. When you try to roll with Kuki Shinobu, by the way, who is an absolute ninja wife, because she looks exactly like Akali, and Akali is like one of my favorite characters in. But with that being said, as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time, or at Anime Expo.